Monty here, and this is Monday, March 23rd, and we finally made it to day 3 of the math activities. So, Monty's 20-20-20 series, 20 lessons, 20 days, only 20 minutes apiece. Day 3, we're going to convert degrees to radians. Now, let's do a little bit of practice on what it means to convert from one unit of measure to another. Okay? I always like to go back to the ruler because we all know how to convert from feet to inches. So let's do an example. Let's take 4 inches. What does it mean to convert 4 inches into feet? Okay? So, how do we convert from inches to feet? You guys remember how to do that? Let's do an example. 4 inches. Well, we want to get rid of the inches and leave feet. Okay? What do we multiply by? How do we get rid of inches? Okay? You need a relationship between feet and inches. So, we know that 1 foot is to 12 inches. Okay? By multiplying by feet, dividing by inches, inches cancels, leaving us with feet. So our final answer will be 4 feet for 12. Okay, because the inches cancel. 4 over 12. 4 times 1. 4 times 3. Okay. 4's cancel. And we have a third of a foot. A third of a foot. Cool? All right. So, converting from one unit to another. Okay, so let's go back to the last week of school. Actually, the last 2 weeks of school. If you remember in geometry class, I kept handing you the unit circle. Okay? So let's go over here and create a unit circle. We always start at 0 degrees, and as we count it around the circle, 90 degrees, 180 degrees, 270 degrees, 360 degrees. Remember how many times we did that day after day after day? Many of you got tired of just writing degrees. That's what we grew up. That was the unit of measure that made sense to us. Okay? Then I was trying to convince you that the calculator works in a different unit of measure. It's called a radian. And we just got started with that before school got closed. Remember what the very first thing we did with our calculator every day when we turned it on was? Had to find the mode button, right? First thing we did when we turned our calculator on, we hit the mode button to see if it was in degrees or radians. Okay, so let's go back and actually count in radians. Does anybody remember that? We had 0 radians, and an entire circle was 2 pi radians. Remember circumference? 2 pi r? All right. So we had 0 radians, pi radians, 2 pi radians. Okay? And then the last couple of days, we just got to the point where we could actually start to break this up. And this was pi over 2 radians, 2 pi over 2 radians, 3 pi over 2 radians. Okay? All right. And then we actually handed out unit circles, okay, with all the measurements on there. We don't need to know all that, but we do need to be able to convert from degrees to radians. Okay? So, to convert, I want you to remember one important area. 180 degrees is the same as pi radians. Just like on a ruler, 1 foot is 12 inches. If you have that concept, this is easy. Okay? So, I'm going to take a little break, clear the board, and let's actually do a couple of those problems on page 3 and 4. Okay, now we're ready to do a couple problems. Okay? The key to success is to remember 0 degrees is the same as 0 radians. But when we go halfway around the circle, pi radians is the same as 180 degrees. Okay? Just like 12 inches is to 1 foot, pi radians is 180 degrees. So we can divide out the degrees to leave radians, or divide out the radians to leave degrees. Okay? So on your worksheet, page 3 and 4, the first couple are all laid out for you. I thought we would do number 3 and number 7. Okay? So the first thing I'd like to do is when I see 210 degrees, I'd like to visually see where that is. Okay? So remember, we always go counterclockwise in the positive direction. So as we go positive 180 degrees, 210 degrees. Okay? 210 degrees, if we were counting by 30s, remember the day we counted by 30s? Pi over 6, 2 pi over 6, 3 pi over 6, 4 pi over 6, 5 pi over 6, 6 pi over 6, 7 pi over 6. Let's see if we can actually convert degrees to radians and come up with 7 pi over 6. You ready? We got to divide out degrees. So we have pi radians over 180 degrees. So multiply by pi radians, divide out 180 degrees. Okay? So we're going to cancel the degrees, leaving us with radians. 210 pi radians over 180. Okay? Now, one thing to always remember when we're converting to radians, pi is always in the answer. It's a part of the circle. Remember, pi is the key to success with all circles. So, there's our answer. Now, let's take some time and simplify. When we go to simplify, the first thing we want to do is, what are multiples that we can cancel? Well, I see a 0 and a 0, so I'll get rid of that. Okay, what does that leave us with? 21 pi over 18. Can you think of ways to simplify 21 and 18? What are multiples of 21 that are multiples of 18? We got 3's. Actually, just 3, isn't it? Yep. 3 times 7 pi, 3 times 6. Let's cancel those 3's. 7 pi over 6. Okay? Leave the pi, because pi represents radians. 7 pi over 6. 7 pi over 6. Okay? All right. So, all we're doing in this entire lesson is converting from one unit of measure that we're good at, degrees, and leaving it in radians, which is the unit of measure our calculator uses when talking about circles. Okay? All right. Number 7, pi over 6 radians. Pi over 6 radians. That's kind of a cool one because if you remember in class, where was pi over 6? Pi over 6, okay? We only did it once or twice depending on the period, okay? Pi over 6 actually is right here, okay? Pi over 6 is 30 degrees. Let's see if we can get that by converting from radians to degrees. So we have to divide out the radians and leaving degrees. So we're going to multiply by 180 degrees and divide out the radians. Okay? So again, when we multiply and divide, cross out the radians, cross out the pi, leaving us with 180 over 6. 180 degrees divided by 6. How many 6s in 18? 3. Yep. Awesome. So, conversion from degrees to radians, from what we knew as we grew up to what the calculator does, which is a more accurate unit of measurement. That's all this lesson was. So there's a front and a back side. Take a look, try them. Next thing you know, your 20 minutes of math will be done. Okay? Tomorrow, day 4, okay, we're going to actually talk about sectors, area of a sector. Okay? So, we'll see you tomorrow with another lesson of Montes 20-20-20 series. We'll be on day 4. See you real soon.